Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. In today's video we are going to be popping on our helmets and strapping ourselves into our cockpits for some cheeky space dogfighting action as we travel all the way back to the early 90s for the spacefaring title Wing Commander. This originally released on MS-DOS back in 1990 and Wing Commander was developed by Origin Systems, a studio of some renown and worthy of a feature in of itself. This was founded in the early 80s by the Garriott brothers. It was perhaps best known for the Ultima series of games, which helped kind of pave the way for computer RPGs back in those days. Origin would also boast amongst its staff a number of legendary names who would go on to make big waves in the industry. You had Warren Spector, who helped bring us System Shock and Deus Ex, John Romero, who many of you probably know went on to co-found ID and bring us the likes of Wolfenstein 3D and Doom, and the man who was behind the Wing Commander franchise, Chris Roberts. At its heart, Wing Commander is a space combat simulator. You are cast in the role of a rookie pilot who is on the side of the Terran Confederation. The Confederation is locked in a long-running war against the Kilrathi, which is basically what you get if you cross the Klingon with a cat. Your rookie pilot is stationed aboard the Tiger's Claw, and the premise here is simple. You complete missions for the Confederation, rise up through the ranks, and hopefully save humanity from the Kilrathi threat. Now, there are a few things that do make Wing Commander stand out. Between missions, you get to hang out with your comrades, you get to speak to them, hear what they're thinking as the story progresses. There are a number of little cinematics between missions to help tell the story and push things along, and the game allows for something of a branching path. A lot of this may seem incredibly simplistic compared to what we have nowadays, but back then this was boundary pushing and it garnered a lot of attention and a lot of acclaim. So let's go into the branching paths. It's quite simple. You see, if you complete your objectives and do well, you'll move along the winning path. If you fail your objectives, but if you manage to stay alive, then you will get pushed along the losing path, with the objectives in the next few missions reflecting the changing state of the game world. Now, on the release, Wing Commander was a big critical and commercial success. And then it got ported to many other platforms. The Amiga 500 would get a port, the CD32 got a port. They would be released on the SNES, and then we'd get to the version that we are going to play today, the Sega CD version. And what makes this one stand out is that this one features full voice acting and actually gives your character the name of Hotshot. Now, as mentioned, the game was largely successful, became a bestseller. It would pop up frequently over the years on best games lists for the PC and Amiga platforms. Critics and fans would praise pretty much every aspect of the game, be it the gameplay, the music, or the graphics. It would also go on to influence many other space combat games that came after it, and it spawned its own franchise. The game itself will be followed up by 2 expansion packs within the first couple of years, and then got an enhanced remake for the 3DO system called Super Wing Commander. In subsequent years, we would see several sequels be released, a number of spin-offs. It got an animated series at one point, and it got its own movie in 1999, which, as was the case with many video game adaptations back then, it managed to be a critical and commercial flop. Now, the movie was not Wing Commander's first flirtation with live action, though, as by the third Wing Commander title, the series had incorporated live action cutscenes into itself, with performances from the likes of Mark Hamill, John Rhys-Davies, Malcolm McDowell. So, yeah, it was one of those games that really kind of like tried to push that sort of narrative live action structure forward. So, the question you might be asking, why am I playing this? Why am I playing the Sega CD version in particular? Well, I had this game for the Amiga 500 back in the day, and it was one of those titles that always struck with me, despite me not really having a clue how to play it. There was just something about the presentation that really grabbed me. There was this opening sequence screen with an orchestra, the space action and scenes in the bar, and I didn't make any progress back then, but even I could recognise that there was something there. Now, as I grew up, I learned about how legendary a franchise it was, that it had this huge fan base, and of course we will touch upon it later, but I did also back the spiritual successor, Star Citizen, so it's always been on my list to visit this one. So why the Sega CD version? The honest answer for me is accessibility, ease to record it, I'm not really sure if there's a definitive version of the game out there. From what I know, they say the Amiga 500 port is a bit of a miracle. The CD32 port is meant to be fantastic, and I imagine there's many people out there who will say the original version is the definitive version. But something about playing on the Sega CD also spoke to me. I'm always keen to cover more for that system, and I was quite intrigued to hear these early flirtations with voice acting. And my understanding is that the ports are somewhat evenly matched, but do keep in mind, for my experience here, I'll be using a Mega Drive controller, in particular the 6-button one, rather than a mouse and keyboard or a joystick. So let's get on with it. Let's play some Wing Commander. Our game boots up with the lovely Sega CD loading sequence, and we are put into a disappointingly bare bones main menu. I don't know what I was expecting here. I maybe expected a little bit more pizzazz for a game of Wing Commander's reputation. And even more disappointing, I don't even get the cheeky opening screen with the orchestra. But it is what it is, it's fine. I'm not here for orchestras, I'm here to orchestrate an ass whooping on the Kilrathi. So on we go to the Vega campaign. This game pulls no punches, it pops me straight into combat in a cockpit of a ship, I get about 5 seconds of flight time, and then I explode into a billion pieces, and I'm told game over. But not to worry, it's all just me playing around in a flight simulator and not the game itself. I leave the simulator and I'm in the main lounge of the Tiger's Claw, the place my pilot, named Hotshot, calls home. In the background I've got some really jaunty music to go along with the location, and I cannot fault the art or presentation here at all. The bar looks absolutely lovely with a colourful and engaging pixel style to it. The characters remind me a little bit of point and click characters with how nicely detailed they are, and if I click one of them I get this animated close-up of their face as they speak to me, and they've got like a degree of lip syncing here to go along with the voices. Here we have 3 people I can speak to. You've got the bartender, Shot Glass. He used to be a pilot, but he was pulled from service some time ago. He's a typical kind of he knows everyone and everything kind of guy. At a table there's 2 pilots, Paladin and Angel, who are on board to give me some advice too. Behind them there's a scoreboard which shows where I stand in terms of ranking. I'm ranked by how many kills I have and how many sorties I've been on. It's easy immediately to see why people lauded this game back in the day just from this small glimpse. It does a lot to draw you into its world, and with this version we're getting that added bonus of the voice acting, which isn't too bad. So we go through the door into barracks where we can save or load the game, or we can quit, or then we can go get our mission briefing. Again, the presentation here is fantastic. The mission briefing is fully voiced. It has some cool camera cuts and interjections from the other characters, and you can really see the effort that has been made by the developers to capture a cinematic feel. And this is something that I might mention a lot, but this feels so advanced for a game that was originally released in 1990. From here, we get this really fantastic animated sequences of the pilots tooling up, getting into their ships. Animation is gorgeous, the graphics genuinely pop and give you this feeling of getting ready for a battle. So what is our first mission? It's just a training mission, a patrol mission between 3 nav points, then we come back home. We are warned that we might encounter an enemy along the way, and if we do, we are to engage them. Simple enough, let's go. So in space, it all looks really nice. The first craft is a Hornet class ship. Cockpit, really nicely designed, the player animates as you move. You get all your relevant information there on the screen, but how does it feel to control? Now, as mentioned, I'm using a 6-button Mega Drive pad, and I would heavily advise reading the manual for the game before going into it, because there's a lot of information to retain, as well as the manual actually giving you a step-by-step on how to complete this first mission. Something that I totally missed. Control-wise, it's alright. The D-pad controls your pitch and yaw. Pressing A fires guns, holding B with D-pad up and down changes your speed, D-pad left and right with while holding B controls the roll. On the 6-button controller, the X, Y and Z buttons, in particular Y and Z, control what they call a VDU, with C coming in to kind of confirm your selection. Now, I won't say it's simple, because I don't necessarily think it is, and there's a lot to remember. And I also would have to say that using a D-pad for movement instead of an analog stick or joystick did feel a little bit weird. So again, I go back to that point, read the manual, because it will serve as your tutorial for this opening mission. In game, you are not given any guidance, you aren't given training dummies or information over the speaker with your instructions, you are expected to know what to do. Again, I didn't do this. So I ran into a few issues. So we'll take our first path anyway, to the first navigation point, and we run into some enemy Kilrathi class ships who are here to ruin our day. As you can see from the footage, I don't have the easiest time of this. Again, game released back in 1990, a lot of the modern conveniences that we take for granted are lacking here. The biggest thing missing for me was a little hit indicator that these games tend to have, telling you where to pop your crosshair to guarantee a hit on the enemy ship. You don't have that here, you kind of have to figure it out for yourself. The other thing I kind of struggled with here was just understanding my position in relation to the other enemies and in space itself. The pixelated style of the ships, the lower frame rate, the lack of other things in the environment just made it a little bit harder to get my bearings. But we do manage to take out the enemy ships, get to the first nav point, simple, on to the next one. I have to go through an asteroid field for this one. I get a little bit cocky in my first attempt, it doesn't end well for me, but in a subsequent attempt I do lower my speed and we're through this field of danger rocks. On to the third nav beacon, more enemies to take out. They're a little bit tougher than the first batch, but a lot of this is just down to me really figuring out what I need to do. I struggle with where to aim, get a good position, but we managed to get through it, and it's back to the Tiger's Claw for a well-earned cuppa. At least it would be if this wasn't the hardest part of the mission for me. If you remember what I've said several times about reading the manual and how I hadn't done that, this was my punishment. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to approach Tiger's Claw, radio it via the VDU, get permission to dock, and then you approach landing bay, which is a grey rectangle on the back of the ship. I didn't do that. What I did was smash into the ship. A lot. Like some kind of demented fly bumping into a windshield, because I am an idiot. Eventually I did read the bloody manual, and it tells me exactly what to do, and magically it works. I'm back on the Tiger's Claw and ready for a cup of Yorkshire's finest brew. Mission 1 is down, and how do I feel? Well, I'm really positive about it. Just from this first mission alone, I am impressed by what they were able to do back then, and get onto the Mega CD. Control-wise, it's going to take some getting used to, but it shouldn't be too bad. And the only thing that kind of worries me is the core gameplay maybe being a little bit trickier than I might think to get used to, but the more I play, the better I get, right? Now, again, how this game will play on the Mega Drive's 3-button controller, I'm not quite sure. I can see navigating the VDU being a bit of a nightmare via that, so it's worth keeping that in mind. We get a debriefing sequence that follows our return home, told how many kills I have, and I'm popped back at the bar, ready to take on my next mission. Mission 2 is a basic escort mission. I fly with another ship to a nav point, protect it from wrong-uns. Simple enough premise, let's see how it goes. So, having read the manual, got a bit more knowledge, I know that I have a location marked, and if there's no threat nearby, I can tap B and C together to engage autopilot. It saves me time. It gets lovely little cinematic showing the ships flying to the destination as well. How lovely. We drop out of autopilot straight into a threat. A number of Selfie class ships are upon us. Again, thanks to the power of reading, I can now command my other pilot in my wing, Spirit, to break off and attack the enemies. I'm not sure how useful she was. I'm fairly sure she got in my way and I shot her a couple of times. But it's something at least, isn't it? Ships taken out, we continue escorting the Drayman to our next nav point, where, you guessed it, there are some enemies waiting for us. I'm a lot more confident, and we blast these absolute bad lads to smithereens, finish up escorting the ship, and back to the Tiger's Claw via an asteroid field, just in time to get a promotion and be moved to the next star system. So we go back to how does this game work, what is the flow here? You complete a number of missions in the star system. Depending on how well you do and the objectives you complete, you move on to another one at the end of it. The star system you go to depends on which branch you are put onto, the winning or losing one. I'm kind of put onto the winning one because I did all my objectives, and I get a new pilot to accompany me in this system, Paladin. I'm given a new ship to play with as well. We get our first mission, the patrol mission, comes with a warning of a minefield being present in the area. Now before we get to the minefield, there's a matter of some Kilrathi fighters to take out first. I kind of struggled in an attempt or two here against them. Again, I struggle to understand my positioning in relation to them. And I've noticed that the speed of the game does seem to fluctuate depending on what is going on, and that does throw me off in a number of situations. The other thing I find, and this happens a lot in the combat encounters for me while I'm playing the game can be completely and utterly unforgiving. If you do not approach correctly, you will be wiped out immediately. But we take out the Drowthy and we turn our attention to the minefield, where once again, I struggled. My thinking here was to treat it the same as the asteroids. Steady, slow pace, avoid the mines. And I was wrong. Turns out what happens if you go past the mines, they will home onto you for an amount of time. So what you have to do is you have to make sure you're going through at a faster pace. You avoid them and they will come towards you, but you'll get past them in enough time and out of their range. I do take a couple of hits going through the minefield, but it's not enough to hurt me too much. We get to where the next nav point is, take out a few more enemies, back to the Tiger's Claw. This pattern repeats for the next few missions, but sometimes these objectives are varying a little bit. There's one mission where we have to take out a larger capital ship. It wasn't too hard, but again, the problem with the positioning came into play here. Sometimes it felt like the ship would just vanish from my view, so I'd completely lose track of where I was, and also the slower movement just kind of really threw me quite a bit, but we do get there. And then we come to another escort mission where I have to defend this ship against attackers as it makes its way to destination. Unfortunately, despite multiple attempts, I just completely failed to defend it each and every time. When I read up on it, it turns out what I can do is contact the enemy ships via the VDU, taunt them and lure them away, but it just never seemed to work for me. And they just focus on the ship I was defending and take it out within seconds. Now, this doesn't stop the progress, as mentioned earlier, the branching paths, so at the end of this cluster of missions, they reference what's happened and send me to a different star system than the one that they would have done if I'd saved the ship. Now, along the way throughout the missions, we also do encounter a few named ships here and there, which they always seem to get away from me, unfortunately, because I'm just not quick enough at taking them out. But these are apparently piloted by specialists from the Kilrathi. And along the way we also get a cutscene showing us taking over a Kilrathi base. So, with all of this progress made, I think it's a good time to wrap the review up. I've put a fair number of hours into Wing Commander, beyond capturing the footage for this review, and whilst I haven't been able to complete the game just yet, I've been really enjoying my time with it. It has been an absolute joy to sit down and properly play this game that I remember from my childhood. It's not just a game from my childhood though, this is a game that was highly influential and highly revered on its time of release. Playing it, it's very easy to see why people fell in love with it, and also how it helped lay the foundation for an entire genre. Now the game is showing its age now. There are many games that came afterwards that do what it did better. But I always think it's really important for people to be able to go back and experience the titles that lay the foundations for the future of the gaming industry. Wing Commander is a game that even now does a great job of drawing you in and making you feel like you're a part of its world. Sure, it's not as large and expansive a world as what you would have nowadays. Maybe it is a little bit simplistic, but it actually makes you care about this war between the Terrans and the Kilrathi. I think the core gameplay, the ship combat, shows its age. It's cumbersome, feel overly punishing, and it lacks a lot of modern conveniences, but we had to start somewhere. Outside of that, I loved the way the game was presented to me. It made me feel like I was a pilot aboard the Tiger's Claw. Yeah, again, simple. There are 2 rooms there to explore. The characters had maybe 3 lines of dialogue, but this was a solid attempt for back then, and I keep saying, it drew me in. Now, I was also fond of the idea of the game having branching paths where failing an objective doesn't give you a game over. This pops you on a different branch, and this is reflected in the overall story. I go back to it, maybe a bit of a broken record, but I'm stunned that this was a game that came out in 1990, given the depth on display here. I don't think this would be a game that I would keep going back to, but it's one I'm glad to have experienced, and one that I would highly recommend people check out, especially for its historical importance. Unfortunately, it is a game that is very easy to go back to. The franchise and the 5 core games are spin-offs. They're on GOG, good old games. They're relatively cheap, fairly risk-free title to go back to. The one caveat, I believe there might be some issues with Wing Commander 1 and 2 and the emulation relating to the speed of the game, what's on screen, and I think this has been solved on GOG's release, but do be mindful of it. Maybe there might be a bit of extra work to do. Like mentioned earlier, I played the Mega CD version. I don't think it differs too much from the PC version. If you did want to play the Mega CD version, it's a bit pricier. The PC version goes for about £5 for 1 and 2. The Mega CD version goes for between £70 to £80 on eBay. What about the franchise itself though? Well, despite it being so influential and so big, the series kind of fizzled out around the turn of the century. There was a title called Wing Commander Arena that released on Xbox Live Arcade in 2007. Didn't really seem to make too much of an impact, and it seems like the franchise is pretty much dead now, but at least we can get the games, and there seems to be a really big active fan community out there for it. There is, however, something of a spiritual successor out there, and I am talking about Star Citizen and Squadron 42. Star Citizen, won't go into it too much, but it's an insanely ambitious multiplayer title. Comes from the mind of Chris Roberts. It's been in development for an incredibly long time. It was announced via a Kickstarter campaign back in 2012, and it's grown somewhat infamous for its prolonged development time and the very high real-life cost of some of its ships. It's in something of an alpha state right now. It's playable, has free weekends every now and then if you are interested. I backed it via Kickstarter, but it's something I've never sat down properly to play. I'm kind of waiting for the full release, if that is something that ever comes. There's a lot of grumbling on the internet about it, understandably so, but that is for someone else to cover. What's Squadron 42, you might ask? Well, that is a single player module from the Star Citizen universe. This is a bit more like Wing Commander. It aims to be a cinematic space action game and features a cast with the likes of Gary Oldman, Gillian Anderson, Mark Strong, Mark Hamill, John Rhys Davies, and many more. It's due to release next year, 2026. But there has been no real word on when the full version of Star Citizen is due to release. Like mentioned, that is a subject for a different video by someone much more informed than I. But all that said, this is about Wing Commander, and I heartily recommend giving Wing Commander a go, as well as the other titles in the franchise. It's a very interesting and important part of gaming history, and is well worth preserving and playing. With all of that said, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments about this title and the series itself. Was it one that you played back in the day? Do you have fond memories of it? Or have I inspired you to give it a go? If I have done, do let me know how it goes for you. I'd love to hear what you think of it. Please, like I say, leave a comment below, leave a like on the video, and subscribe to the channel for more retro gaming goodness. Until next time, thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you again in a future video. Goodbye.